tranquil morning at Eagles Point Harbor was shattered by the distant rumble of motorcycle engines. Mia Lawson, the daughter of a humble fisherman, stood on the weathered dock, coiling a rope with practiced ease. At 22, her confidence belied her young age. The water shimmered under the golden sunrise, a serene backdrop that sharply contrasted with the menace rapidly approaching. The gang known as the Black Serpents roared into the marina's gravel lot, their chrome bikes catching the early light. At the center was their leader, Brody Fang Daniels, a man infamous for his ruthlessness. Mia's heart pounded, but she refused to show fear. She had heard whispers of their exploits, tales of intimidation and chaos, but never imagined they would come here. Well, look who's here playing captain. Brody smirked as he dismounted, his leather boots crunching on the gravel. His gang fanned out behind him, forming a loose circle. "This is a private dock," Mia said, keeping her voice steady. "Unless you've got business here, you need to leave." Brody's laugh echoed menacingly. "Oh, sweetheart, we're here on business, all right. We're expanding our reach, and this quaint little harbor caught our eye." From the marina office, old Joe, the dock manager, watched with growing concern. He reached for the phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. Out on the water, Captain Tom Lawson, Mia's father, was guiding a family on a fishing charter when his phone buzzed. "Tom," Joe said, his voice low and urgent. "The Black Serpents are at the dock. They're circling Mia." Tom's jaw tightened, but his tone remained calm. "I'll be there soon." Back at the dock, Brody advanced toward Mia, his grin fading as he picked up a coil of rope she had dropped. "Your daddy teach you this? Bet he'd be proud to see you holding down the fort." Mia stepped back, her posture unwavering. "He'll be back soon. You're not welcome here." Brody's gang laughed. One of his men, a hulking brute nicknamed Ox, cracked his knuckles. "I like her spirit. Makes it more fun when they fight back." Mia felt the cold grip of fear but refused to let it show. The roar of an approaching engine drew everyone's attention. Tom's fishing boat appeared from the mist, its motor humming steadily. From the helm, Tom assessed the situation with a trained eye, noting every position, angle, and potential threat. The men on the dock saw only a weathered fisherman in a flannel shirt. They had no idea they were staring at a retired Navy SEAL. Mia stood her ground, her fingers still gripping the coiled rope as Brody's sneer deepened. The tension on the dock was palpable, the Black Serpents sensing no immediate threat. Yet Mia's sharp gaze darted to the horizon, where her father's fishing boat slowly made its way closer. Brody leaned in, his breath pungent with the scent of tobacco. "You think Daddy's gonna save the day, huh? Let me tell you something, sweetheart. This place, it belongs to us now." "I don't think you understand what you're walking into," Mia said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "This is a peaceful town. We don't take kindly to your kind of trouble." "Peaceful," Brody mocked, letting the word roll off his tongue with disdain. "You hear that, boys? The little lady thinks we're gonna disturb her peace. How quaint." The laughter of his gang echoed, but it was short-lived. Brody's eyes narrowed as he caught a glimpse of the boat nearing the dock. "Well, well, looks like Daddy's home." Tom Lawson's weathered hands gripped the wheel of the boat with calm precision, his sharp eyes scanning the dock. Every muscle in his body was attuned to the impending confrontation, a skill honed over years of high-stakes missions in far-off lands. His passengers, a family of tourists, sensed the shift in his demeanor and moved quietly to the back of the boat, their curiosity replaced with unease. "Stay here," Tom instructed the family as he eased the boat against the dock. His voice was calm, measured, a tone that carried an unspoken authority. He turned to the gang with deliberate slowness, his flannel shirt unbuttoned to reveal a plain white tee beneath. His rugged jeans and boots betrayed no hint of the elite training that lay beneath the surface. Brody watched him approach, the corners of his mouth twitching in a smirk. "This the big man we've been waiting for? You don't look like much." Tom's eyes flickered to Mia, checking for any signs of harm. Her posture, resolute and defiant, told him everything he needed to know. "You don't need to look like much," Tom replied simply. His calm tone only fueled Brody's arrogance. Brody gestured to his gang with a lazy wave. "You see, boys, this is the problem with small-town folk. They don't know when they're beat." Mia took a small step forward, her chin lifted. The only ones out of place here are you. Brody's grin faded as Tom's gaze shifted to him, steel gray eyes that seemed to bore into his very core. You've got one chance to leave this dock and take your boys with you. Brody laughed, the sound forced. And what if we don't? What are you gonna do, old man? Throw your fishing net at us? Tom didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked at Mia. How's your knot work these days, kid? Mia blinked but caught the subtle signal. She stepped to the side, drawing their attention momentarily away from her father. Brody's patience snapped. He stepped closer to Tom, his hand moving to the chain hanging from his belt. Enough with the games! The sound of heavy boots on the dock made everyone turn. Old Joe, armed with a weathered baseball bat, emerged from the marina office. Behind him were two dockhands, each carrying sturdy wooden oars. Their expressions were grim, their loyalty to Tom and Mia evident. "Thought you could use a hand, Tom," Joe said, his voice steady despite the tension. "Ain't nobody taking over this dock while I'm around." Brody's gang shifted uneasily. The presence of reinforcements disrupted their earlier confidence. Brody, however, refused to be deterred. "What's this? The retirement home brigade?" Tom stepped forward, the dock creaking under his boots. "You think you've got the numbers. You think you've got the strength. But you're wrong." Brody sneered, tightening his grip on the chain. "And why's that?" Tom's voice dropped, his calm now carrying an edge that sent a chill through the air. "Because real strength isn't about numbers. It's about knowing when not to fight, and when you've got no other choice." In a blur, Tom moved. His hand shot out, grabbing Brody's wrist and twisting it with precision. The chain clattered to the dock as Brody stumbled, his shock evident. Before anyone could react, Tom's foot swept out, knocking the chain further away. The gang surged forward, but old Joe and the dockhands stepped in, forming a barrier. Mia, her hands steady, reached for a fishing gaff nearby. She held it defensively, ready to strike if necessary. "You made a mistake coming here," Joe growled, swinging the bat and forcing one of the gang members back. The dock erupted into chaos. Tom's movements were fluid, each strike and block executed with surgical precision. Ox charged at him, but Tom sidestepped, using the man's momentum against him. Ox crashed into a piling with a heavy thud, groaning as he hit the ground. The other bikers hesitated, their confidence faltering as one by one their numbers were neutralized. Mia swung the gaff, keeping one of the gang members at bay, her fear replaced by adrenaline-fueled resolve. The fight was over in minutes. Brody, now pinned against a stack of crates by Tom's firm grip, spat out a curse. "You've got no idea who you're messing with." Tom's grip tightened just enough to silence him. "I don't need to know who you are. What matters is who you're not, and you're not welcome here." The distant sound of sirens cut through the morning air. Sheriff Jacobs, alerted by Joe's earlier call, arrived with his deputies. They quickly took control of the situation, handcuffing the subdued gang members. As the bikers were led away, Brody glared at Tom. "This isn't over." Tom didn't flinch. "It is, if you're smart enough to leave it that way." The dock fell silent once more, save for the gentle lapping of water against the pilings. Mia lowered the gaff, her breath coming in short bursts. She looked at her father, a mixture of awe and relief in her eyes. "You okay?" Tom asked, stepping toward her. Mia nodded, her grip on the gaff loosening. "Yeah, but Dad, that was..." Tom placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's what needed to be done." Old Joe approached, his bat resting on his shoulder. "You've still got it, Tom." Tom managed a small smile. "Some things you don't forget." The sheriff approached, his brow furrowed. "You've got a knack for keeping the peace, Lawson." Tom shrugged. "Just protecting what matters." Mia glanced at the horizon where the sun had fully risen, casting a warm glow over the marina. Despite the chaos, there was a sense of calm returning to the harbor. But in the back of her mind, she knew this wasn't the end. The Black Serpents weren't the kind to give up easily. And something told her this was just the beginning. Tom Lawson stood on the weathered dock, the morning sun casting a golden glow on the tranquil water, now a stark contrast to the tension that had just filled the air. The Black Serpents had been subdued, their bravado shattered by the quiet strength of a retired Navy SEAL. But as the gang was hauled away by Sheriff Jacobs and his deputies, Tom's mind was already racing ahead, preparing for what he knew was inevitable. Inside the marina office, Mia poured a cup of steaming coffee for her father. Her hands trembled slightly as the adrenaline wore off. Tom accepted the cup with a nod of thanks, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. The tranquil waves no longer offered comfort, but instead hinted at the brewing storm he felt deep in his gut. "You think they'll come back?" Mia asked, breaking the silence. Tom took a slow sip, his gaze unwavering. "They're not the type to accept defeat quietly. Brody's pride won't let him walk away, and he's got more men at his disposal. This was just a warning." Mia set the coffee pot down with a firm clink. "Then we need to be ready." Tom's lips curled into a faint smile, pride swelling at his daughter's resolve. "We will be. But readiness isn't just about standing your ground. It's about outthinking your opponent, staying 2 steps ahead." Mia frowned, her brow furrowed. "What are you thinking?" Tom didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood and walked to the office window, his eyes on the distant hills beyond the marina. "I'm thinking we need to make some calls. People I can trust. People who know how to handle situations like this." Mia hesitated. "You mean from your past?" Tom turned to her, his expression serious. "Sometimes the past is exactly what you need to deal with the present." The first call Tom made was to an old friend, Nate Hawk Hawkins, a former SEAL who had settled in a nearby town. Hawk had seen his share of action and was as sharp and capable as they came. Within an hour, Hawk arrived, his battered pickup truck pulling into the gravel lot. He stepped out, his imposing frame immediately commanding attention. With him was a duffel bag slung over one shoulder and a grin. "Damn," Hawk greeted, clasping his friend's hand firmly. "Heard you been stirring up trouble." Tom chuckled. "Trouble found me." Hawk's grin widened as he glanced at Mia. "You must be the brave one holding down the fort." Mia gave a small smile. "Just doing what I've learned." Hawk nodded approvingly. "Good. You've got more guts than most." The 3 of them sat at the office table, the air thick with unspoken tension. Tom laid out the situation, his voice calm but deliberate. Hawk listened intently, his eyes narrowing as the details unfolded. "They'll come back," Hawk said finally, his tone matter-of-fact. "And they'll bring more than a chain and some fists next time." Tom nodded. "That's what I figured." Hawk leaned back, crossing his arms. "We'll need more than just us. Anyone else you trust?" Tom hesitated. "There's one more, Ava." Mia tilted her head. "Ava?" "Ava Marks," Tom explained. "Ex-military, tactical specialist. She's tough as nails and knows how to handle herself. If anyone can help us hold this place, it's her." By midday, Ava had arrived. Her lean frame and sharp eyes gave her an air of authority that demanded respect. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who had faced danger countless times. The moment she stepped onto the dock, she surveyed the surroundings with practiced efficiency. "Tom," Ava said, her voice steady, "looks like you've got yourself a situation." "Or like an impending storm," Tom replied. "Think you can help us weather it?" Ava smirked. "Wouldn't miss it." The group gathered on the dock, their conversation punctuated by the sounds of seagulls and lapping waves. Old Joe joined them, along with 2 dock hands who had stepped up earlier. Together, they formed a plan. "We'll need to fortify the marina," Ava said, her tone all business. "Barriers, clear lines of sight, and fallback points. This place is open on too many fronts." Hawk nodded. "We'll also need to set up communications. If they come in force, we can't afford to be isolated." Tom glanced at Mia. "You're in charge of coordinating with the locals. Anyone willing to stand with us needs to know the risks. This isn't just about protecting the dock, it's about protecting the community." Mia straightened, her resolve firm. "I'm on it." As the day wore on, the marina transformed into a makeshift stronghold. The dock hands repurposed old fishing nets and crates to create barriers. Hawk set up radios, ensuring the group could stay connected even if things went south. Ava worked on securing vantage points, marking spots where they could observe any incoming threats. Mia went door to door, rallying support from the locals. Many were hesitant at first, wary of getting involved, but as word spread of what had happened that morning, a quiet determination began to take hold. By sunset, a small group of volunteers had gathered at the marina, armed with whatever tools they could find, bats, crowbars, even a few old hunting rifles. Tom addressed the group, his voice steady and authoritative. "This isn't just about standing up to a gang. It's about protecting our way of life. The Black Serpents think they can intimidate us, but they don't understand who they're dealing with. Together, we're stronger than they'll ever. The crowd nodded, a murmur of agreement rippling through them. Mia felt a swell of pride as she looked around. These were her neighbors, her friends, and they were ready to fight for their home. As night fell, the marina buzzed with quiet activity. Hawk and Ava double-checked their preparations, ensuring every angle was covered. Tom stood at the edge of the dock, his silhouette framed by the moonlit water. Mia joined him, her footsteps soft against the wooden planks. "Do you think we'll be ready?" she asked. Tom glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "We'll do what we have to." Mia hesitated. "Dad? I'm scared." Tom placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's okay to be scared. It's what you do with that fear that matters. You've got strength in you, Mia, more than you realize." Before Mia could respond, the sound of distant engines broke the stillness. Tom's gaze hardened as he turned toward the sound. "They're coming," he said, his voice low but resolute. "Stay sharp." The rumble grew louder, the black serpents emerging from the darkness like shadows come to life. This time there were more of them, dozens of bikes roaring down the road toward the marina. At their head was Brody, his face twisted with rage and determination. The battle for Eagles Point Harbor was about to begin, and this time, the stakes were higher than ever. The low hum of engines grew into a thunderous roar, echoing off the still waters of Eagles Point Harbor. Tom Lawson stood at the dock's edge, his gaze unwavering as the black serpents emerged from the darkness like a tide of menace. This time, there were more of them. At least 20 riders led by Brody Daniels, his face a mask of fury. They came in a line, their headlights cutting through the night, turning the gravel parking lot into a flood of harsh light. Behind Tom, the makeshift defenses of the marina bristled with activity. Hawk and Ava stood at key vantage points, their trained eyes scanning for vulnerabilities. The local volunteers, now bolstered by Tom's unyielding resolve, huddled together, their weapons clutched tightly. The air was thick with tension, the kind that pressed down on the chest and made breathing feel like a challenge. "Showtime," Hawk muttered into the radio clipped to his collar. Tom stepped forward as the motorcycles rumbled to a halt. Brody dismounted first, his boots crunching against the gravel. The others followed, spreading out in an arc, their numbers an intimidating display of force. Brody's smirk was gone, replaced by cold fury. "You've got some nerve, old man," Brody called out, his voice carrying across the still night. "I gave you a chance to walk away." Tom remained still, his hands resting loosely at his sides. "No, Brody, I gave you the chance, and you wasted it." Brody took a step closer, his gang flanking him like wolves. "You think these hicks are gonna save you? You think a few nets and crates are gonna stop us?" Tom's lips curved into a faint smile. "I think you're about to learn something about underestimating people." From the shadows, Ava's voice rang out, calm and measured. "You're surrounded, Daniels. Walk away while you still can." Brody froze, his eyes darting toward the sound. His smirk returned, though it was less confident now. "Surrounded? You've got what? A handful of locals with garden tools? My boys will chew through them in minutes." Tom took a step forward, drawing Brody's attention back to him. "Your problem, Brody, is that you assume strength is about numbers, but strength is about strategy. It's about knowing your enemy." Brody's expression darkened. "And what do you think you know about me?" Tom's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "Enough to know you're already in over your head." The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, from the far side of the parking lot, a sudden burst of headlights flared, illuminating another group of figures stepping out of the darkness. Nate Hawkins and 2 other former SEALs stood there, their postures relaxed but their presence undeniable. They didn't carry weapons openly, but their very stance radiated competence. Brody's composure faltered and a murmur rippled through his gang. "You didn't think I'd come alone, did you?" Tom asked, his voice almost amused. "I told you, this dock isn't yours to take." For a moment, Brody seemed to consider retreat, but pride was a powerful force and he wasn't ready to admit defeat. "You don't scare me, old man. You think you're clever, bringing in reinforcements? I've got enough firepower here to level this whole place." "You're welcome to try," Ava said from her perch, her voice icy. "But you'd better hope you hit something, because once you miss, it's over for you." One of the younger bikers shifted uneasily, his hand brushing the handle of a machete strapped to his thigh. He glanced at Brody, his confidence waning. "Boss, maybe we should—" "Shut it," Brody snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut through the night. He pointed a finger at Tom. "This isn't over." Tom tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "No, Brody, it's not over. But it's not going to go the way you think." The standoff stretched, the two groups locked in a silent battle of wills. Then, without warning, one of Brody's men lunged forward, his bat raised. The move was rash, desperate, and it was over in seconds. Hawk stepped in with calculated precision, twisting the bat out of the man's grip and sending him sprawling to the ground. The sound of the impact was like a gunshot in the quiet night. That single action shattered the fragile balance. The bikers surged forward, their aggression fueled by fear and bravado, but Tom's side was ready. From the barricades, the dock hands and locals pushed back, wielding their improvised weapons with surprising effectiveness. Nets were thrown, tangling limbs and slowing the bikers' charge. Hawk and Ava moved like shadows, their movements swift and deliberate. Every punch, every block, was a masterclass in efficiency. Mia, stationed at the marina office, coordinated the volunteers through a makeshift radio system. Her voice was steady, issuing commands with clarity. "Fall back to the second barrier, keep them off the dock." Tom faced off with Brody directly. The gang leader swung a chain, the links whistling through the air. Tom sidestepped, his hand snapping out to grab Brody's wrist. With a swift twist, the chain fell harmlessly to the ground. "You're predictable," Tom said, his tone almost pitying. "And that's your biggest weakness." Brody roared in frustration, his punches wild and unfocused. Tom dodged them effortlessly, his movements calm and deliberate. He wasn't just fighting, he was dismantling Brody's confidence piece by piece. Meanwhile, the tide of the battle turned against the bikers. The locals, inspired by the skill and courage of Tom's group, fought with renewed determination. The bikers' initial charge faltered, their numbers and aggression unable to overcome the unity of the defenders. One by one, the bikers began to fall back, their confidence shattered. Those who resisted were subdued quickly, left sprawled on the gravel or tangled in the nets. Brody, seeing his gang crumble around him, made one last desperate attempt to flee. He turned and sprinted toward his bike, but Ava intercepted him, her movements swift and precise. A single sweep of her leg sent Brody sprawling, and she planted a boot on his back, holding him down. "Going somewhere?" she asked coolly. The parking lot fell silent except for the labored breathing of the bikers, who remained conscious. The battle was over. Tom stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the scene. The locals stood victorious, their faces a mixture of relief and pride. The dock hands who had once hesitated now stood tall, their tools resting on their shoulders like weapons of honor. Sheriff Jacobs arrived moments later, his squad cars flooding the lot with red and blue lights. Deputies moved swiftly, cuffing the subdued bikers and loading them into the cars. Brody was hauled to his feet, his defiance reduced to sullen silence. Jacobs approached Tom, his expression equal parts relief and respect. "You held the line." Tom nodded. It wasn't just me. Everyone played their part. The sheriff looked at the gathered volunteers, his lips twitching into a small smile. "Looks like you've got a town full of fighters." Tom glanced at Mia, who stood beside the radio console, her face streaked with dirt but glowing with quiet pride. "More than that. We've got a town full of people who won't be bullied." As the bikers were taken away and the crowd began to disperse, Tom walked to the edge of the dock, his hands resting on the railing. The water reflected the first hints of dawn, its surface calm once more. Mia joined him, her voice soft. "Do you think they'll come back?" Tom shook his head. "Not after this. They'll remember what happened here tonight." Mia looked out at the horizon, the sky painted with the first light of day. "You really think we made a difference?" Tom smiled, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "We didn't just make a difference, we sent a message. Eagles Point Harbor isn't just a place, it's a home, and no one messes with that." The dawn broke fully over the marina, casting a golden light on a community forever changed, stronger, united, and unshaken. Tom Lawson stood on the dock, watching the last of the sheriff's cruisers drive away with the subdued members of the Black Serpents. The air was heavy, not with tension, but with the kind of stillness that followed a storm. The locals who had stood with him lingered, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and pride. Victory hung in the air, but it was tempered by the knowledge that this wasn't just about defending a marina. It was about drawing a line against everything the gang represented. Hawk approached, a faint smirk on his face, though his eyes betrayed a lingering alertness. "Well, that was fun, like old times." Tom shook his head with a wry smile. "Your idea of fun needs some reevaluation." The two shared a quiet laugh, but the camaraderie was short-lived. From behind them, Mia approached, her expression clouded with concern. "Dad, we've got a problem." Tom turned to her, his instincts immediately sharpening. "What is it?" Mia held up her phone, the screen glowing with an incoming call. "Sheriff Jacobs. He wants to talk to you." Tom took the phone, his voice steady as he answered. "Jacobs." The sheriff's tone was grim on the other end. "Tom, I've got word from a deputy stationed near the main highway. A second group of riders passed through not long ago. They're bigger, meaner, and they're heading your way." Tom's jaw tightened, though his voice remained calm. "How long?" "An hour, maybe less," Jacobs replied. "I'm pulling resources, but it'll take time to get back to the marina." Tom glanced at the people around him, his team, the dock hands, the locals who had stood their ground. They were exhausted, their energy spent from the earlier fight. But the news didn't rattle him. If anything, it focused him. "We'll hold until you get here," Tom said, before hanging up. Hawk tilted his head, sensing the shift. "What's going on?" "Round 2, Tom said simply. "A bigger group. Less talk, more fight." A murmur spread through the volunteers as they overheard. Faces that had been triumphant moments ago now showed a flicker of fear. Ava stepped forward, her sharp gaze sweeping over the group. "If they're coming, we need to move. Quickly." Tom nodded, his voice carrying over the crowd. "We've got less than an hour. If you're not ready to see this through, now's the time to head home. No judgment, but if you stay, we fight together." For a moment there was silence. Then old Joe, still gripping his baseball bat, stepped forward. "I didn't come this far to turn tail now. If they want this marina, they'll have to go through me again." The others followed suit, their resolve returning. Mia watched as the fear in their eyes gave way to determination, and she felt a swell of pride for her neighbors. "All right," Tom said, his tone steady. "Here's what we're gonna do." The preparations this time were different. The earlier defenses had been about holding a single line, a desperate attempt to keep the gang at bay. Now, with Ava and Hawk's tactical expertise, the marina became a labyrinth of traps and choke points. Fishing nets were woven into barriers that could trip riders. Old wooden pallets and crates were stacked strategically, forming cover and funneling attackers into narrow paths. Ava led a group of locals to secure the waterfront, ensuring no one could approach by boat. Hawk worked on setting up secondary defenses, positioning the dock hands with clear sight lines to the entrance. Mia took charge of communication again, her voice steady as she coordinated movements. Tom moved through the marina, checking each position, offering quiet words of encouragement. When he reached Mia, he placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're doing good, kid." She looked up at him, her jaw set with determination. "I just want to make sure everyone gets through this." Tom nodded, his expression softening for a moment. "We will. Together." The roar of engines shattered the night once more, louder and more menacing than before. Tom stood at the center of the dock, flanked by Hawk and Ava. The volunteers waited in their positions, gripping their makeshift weapons with white-knuckled hands. The first bike emerged from the darkness, its rider clad in black leather adorned with spikes and patches. Behind him, more followed, at least 30 this time. At their center was a figure unlike Brody, whose cocky arrogance had been his defining trait. This man radiated cold, unyielding menace. His name was Ray's, and his reputation for brutality preceded him. Ray's dismounted his bike, his heavy boots crunching on the gravel as he surveyed the marina. His gang spread out behind him, a wall of raw intimidation. He took a step forward, his eyes locking onto Tom. "You're the one who embarrassed Brody," Ray's said, his voice low and gravelly. "I don't tolerate weakness in my crew, and I don't let insults slide." Tom stepped forward, meeting Ray's gaze with calm resolve. "This isn't about Brody. This is about you thinking you can take what doesn't belong to you." Ray's chuckled darkly, a sound devoid of humor. "You're brave, old man, I'll give you that, but bravery doesn't stop bullets." Tom didn't flinch. "You're right, but unity does. Look around, Rays. This isn't just a dock, it's a community, and we don't bow to bullies." Raze's smile faded, replaced by a cold glare. "Your community won't last 5 minutes against me and my men." Tom glanced at Hawk and Ava, giving them a subtle nod. Then he spoke, his voice carrying over the entire marina. "We'll see about that." The fight erupted like a thunderstorm. Ray's men charged, their motorcycles tearing through the gravel. But the moment they hit the first line of defenses, chaos ensued. The fishing nets tangled in their wheels, sending several riders sprawling to the ground. Those on foot found themselves funneled into tight corridors, where dock hands and locals struck with bats and crowbars. Ray's advanced, his eyes cold and calculating. He moved with purpose, avoiding the traps and heading straight for Tom. Behind him, his gang was caught in the fray, their numbers faltering as Hawk and Ava led precise counterattacks. Mia stayed at the communications hub, relaying updates and adjusting strategies. Her heart pounded as she watched the battle unfold, but she refused to let fear take over. "Second line, hold position," she called into the radio. "Don't let them through." On the dock, Tom faced off against Ray's. The gang leader was faster and stronger than Brody, his strikes relentless, but Tom's movements were calm, efficient. He dodged and countered, each motion calculated. "You're good," Ray said, his voice strained as he swung again. "But not good enough." Tom deflected the blow with his forearm, then stepped in close, landing a sharp elbow to Ray's ribs. The gang leader stumbled but didn't fall. He grinned, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "That all you've got?" Tom didn't respond. He stepped back, his eyes flicking to the side. Ray's followed his gaze just in time to see Hawk closing in. The former SEAL swung a broken plank, catching Ray's across the shoulder and sending him crashing to the ground. The remaining gang members, seeing their leader fall, hesitated. Ava took advantage of the moment, her voice ringing out. "That's it, you're done here. Leave or we'll finish what you started." One by one, the bikers began to retreat, dragging their injured comrades with them. Ray struggled to his feet, his glare burning into Tom. "This isn't over." Tom stepped closer, his voice low and unyielding. "Yes, it is. And if you come back, you won't leave standing." The gang retreated into the night, their engines fading into the distance. A cheer erupted from the remaining volunteers, their triumph filling the air. Tom turned to them, his expression one of quiet pride. "You did good," he said simply. Mia ran to him, throwing her arms around him. "We did it, Dad." Tom hugged her tightly, his voice soft. "Yeah, we did." As the first light of dawn broke over Eagles Point Harbor, the marina stood united, stronger than ever. Together they had faced the storm and won. Before you go, check out the next video on screen for another amazing story, and be sure to subscribe so you'll always catch our latest content right when it drops.